some kind of year 2004. That is why when I got this call, I said, okay, that's a great loss for Russia. And as probably some of you notice, Russia is not a very small country in terms of population. It's 142 million people almost. And that just looks like what can do one person. But looks like it's a lot. And since Kakha departed to Georgia, it became so visible and so some kind of, you can feel it, how empty became the Russian public policy and Russian public debate without such an important and intelligent and sophisticated and deep thinker and participant in our debate. And since Kakha moved to Georgia, now it's 4 years, almost 4 years, as Kakha is participating in these reforms. So he produces a very, very short, a very brief list of something that has been achieved there, and certainly much more has been left behind this list. And we can continue and continue, and it's impossible even to some kind of to mention everything. I would mention probably 2-3 points. First, his statement when he some kind of left the board of the plane in Tbilisi when he arrived, I believe, June 1st, year 2004. That phrase became really very well known, not only in Georgia, but in Russia and maybe in many other areas. Kakha said, just really something, I don't know, whether it's on the field or in the airport, he said, "We shall sell everything except our conscience." And probably it's a little exaggeration, but it was a discussion at that time that, okay, there is no such an object, there is not such a property in Georgia that cannot be sold. And probably with some exception for National Orthodox Cathedral in Mtsketa. That's considered to be some kind of really national pride. Okay, but all others, including some kind of offices, prime minister, presidential, some kind of, all the infrastructure, everything can be sold. So, and you can probably imagine what kind of shock such statements and such desire, such actions can produce in Georgia that did not have anything like that for previous years. Another issue that Kakha has also mentioned, this reform of police. It's incredible, but Georgian police does not take bribes. For people who grew up in the former Soviet Union and who know what is the situation in Russia, in Georgia, and many other countries, it's just unthinkable. It's impossible to imagine that it could happen, but it's fact of life. And I've been to Georgia, I've seen it, just how the situation has changed. It's just really, it's impossible to imagine. And another issue, once again, is just really striking. This electricity reform that actually attracted only some kind of couple of lines here in the presentation. Georgia, for all history, was an electricity deficient region. I don't know, from the maybe introduction of electricity, Georgia was importing electricity from Russia. And so during the former Soviet Union, it was one story, but since gaining independence, it became the very serious issue in not only international relations, because sometimes our Russian colleagues did use this preference for their favors. There was a lot of cuts in electricity lines, there was a lot of problems and a lot of blackouts, not only because of some problems on Georgian side, that also happened, but also on the problems on the Russian side. Within an incredible short period of time, less than 4 years, Georgia has been moved from electricity deficient country into countries that exporting electricity. Just, you cannot imagine that country does not have oil, does not have gas, that really have a lot, very, very small resources of any kind that can be used for producing electricity, started to export electricity to Russia. And it shows what kind of results can be achieved with two types of reforms. One type of reform that has been introduced by RAO-yes management in Russia, that countries stop to export electricity to Georgia, to Kazakhstan, to many other countries that is used to export for decades. And what can be achieved by some other type of economic reform. So, looking what has been achieved, it's hard. Yes, and in doing this, Georgia became a really leader in transformation, leader in reforms, both economic and many institutional and many structural reforms. And in doing that, so Georgia probably is not really the top leader yet in terms of some kind of state of liberal environment and liberal some kind of framework. But it's no doubt Georgia became a leader in the speed of bringing this liberal transformation within a very short period of time. And in doing this, Georgia has met very interesting challenges, not only on domestic front, with some political opposition, with some kind of slow process of adaptation of people to new situation, but also with external challenges. One of these external challenges came from our respectable international institution, IMF, that it really has a lot of good people and very important in producing technical support and many other reforms. But in some other reforms, looks like in some other policies, a position of our colleagues from the IMF happened to be really lagging behind from what has been achieved by best countries, by best reformers, best people in some other countries. Just let's take this example of new law that allows to fire the central bank chief if inflation exceeds threshold. IMF in just 2 months ago has issued a statement. Let me quote it. The IMF stressed the importance of avoiding any erosion of central bank independence. In this regard, the mission believes that requirements for frequent parliamentary approval of monetary policy goals and instruments, combined with new provisions for the automatic dismissal of the President of the National Bank of Georgia for missing the inflation target, would weaken the operation of the central bank. That's a very interesting statement, because it raises the question, what actually is more important, central bank independence or low inflation? And it looks like not all the time these two targets can be combined. And sometimes central bank independence for some of our colleagues from the fund looks like more important than low inflation. And another issue, to be independent from whom and from what? From authorities or from the outcomes of these particular institutions? And it seems to me that Georgian authorities are moving in the right direction, putting inflation and the dependence on outcomes of particular institutions at much higher level of importance than any other issues. So there is such a statement that the war is too serious to leave it for the generals. Looking at the background of Kakha Bendukidze, who is a biologist, as we know, and looking at the background of such a person like Mart Laar, twice prime minister, former prime minister of Estonia, who is by training is historian, not economist, and Kakha is not economist, I start to think, okay, maybe economic reforms are too serious to be left for economists by training. At least looking at some experience that have been achieved by some other colleagues who have actually not accepted some kind of wrong knowledge or wrong approaches given in some wrong institutions, educational institutions. We can see that's much more important the most important element, the desire to bring liberty and freedom and markets to their respective countries. And now we can say that it really, and these results are especially important due to another external challenge that's coming from my own country, Russia, that in October and November year 2006 have introduced not only embargo as a politically correct statement from our colleagues from the fund, but the total blockade, trade blockade, economic blockade, transportation blockade, some kind of visa blockade, just even postal blockade in a clear, some kind of